What's going on, everyone, and welcome into this edition of b-schaeff Daily. Brandon Schaeffer with you. It is Friday, August 6, 2025. Talking some St. Louis Cardinals baseball after the off day on Thursday. The Cardinals return to Busch Stadium this evening. They'll be taking on the Cubs, which should be a fun weekend series that was made even a little bit more interesting by some news that dropped just a little bit ago on Friday early afternoon. Yadier Molina, former Cardinal great, will be in the dugout in uniform on the Cardinals side for Friday night and Saturday night's game. This is something that came about due to the way it was described by Oliver Marmol. Yadi was in town. He was going to be in town, and this was known some time ago. Heard the way that Ollie described it on 101 ESPN. He had a great interview with Brandon Kiley and Alex Ferrario earlier today. If you guys missed that, I do recommend you check that out from BK and Ferrario. But Ollie described that it was known for a couple of months that Yadi was going to be in town for this weekend, and he had texted Ollie to let him know that. And then as it got a little bit closer, texted him again, kind of saying, hey, would love to meet up. And then the idea was floated, I think is the way that it was described by Ollie on that show anyway, was that Ollie was texted along with John Mozeliak by Yadi to say, hey, would love to be able to be in uniform, spend some time with the guys this weekend that are going to be in town. And Ollie said, he responded right away and said, would love it. And so that's what's going to happen tonight. Cardinals, Cubs on Friday, and then it's a night game as well on Saturday, a weekend of night games with some national television exposure for this Cards-Cubs rivalry. So how about that? Yadier Molina in town and going to be passing on some wisdom perhaps and being involved with things going on down at Busch Stadium. Let me know in the comments what you think about that, because the way that Ollie describes it, I think makes a lot of sense, is that even if it's just for 48 hours, it's a great thing to have somebody with Yadi's experience, his wisdom to impart, and having him around. Said that the one thing that he would love to see kind of rub off on the players is just the dedication and the work ethic that Yadier Molina has. And if he can say a few words to the guys that he runs into in that clubhouse and in that dugout during the next couple of nights that happen to stick, well, that would be just fantastic. Obviously, a big topic of conversation, I think, from the outside when this news gets announced is the notion of, well, you know, there's kind of this conversation that Yadier Molina wants to get into managing someday at the major league level. And, of course, he'd love nothing more than to be the Cardinals manager. Yadier Molina is coming into town, going to stand right there next to the current Cardinals manager in the dugout for these games. Okay, does that get a little bit awkward? Does that bring up some of these uncomfortable topics if you're Oliver Marmol? And to BK's credit on their show, he asked him right about it and said, you know, this is something that people are going to be talking about. And Ollie says, yep, nothing you can do about that. But the decision shouldn't be made based on my ego or my lack of self-esteem, if that were the case, to avoid a situation like this, because it's something that can help our team, something that can help the organization, something that can help the players to have exposure to Yadier Molina, to have his presence around the club. And he's got a great relationship with Yadi and said that there was just not a second thought about the idea that he would love to have him. And that's always been an open invite for Yadi to be involved as he wants to be and can be with his busy life. And so when the opportunity came up, that's not the thing that Oliver Marmol was thinking about. I thought Ollie nailed the interview, by the way, when he talked with the guys there on 101 ESPN. Again, couldn't recommend more going back to listen to that, because it can be an uncomfortable topic when you know what's out there, right? You know the chatter. You understand the way that people perceive maybe the situation. Okay, your current boss that hired you and gave you the job after, you know, letting go of a manager who was successful here in Mike Schilt, and he's gone on to be successful elsewhere. But that guy's not going to be the boss next year. That guy, John Mozeliak, is not going to be in charge beyond the next couple of months. And so you're wondering, okay, what's the relationship with the new guy? Does the new guy want to bring in his own guy? And like that would kind of be a question of itself. Is yes, Yadier Molina has that connection to the Cardinal organization, but he doesn't have that connection to Chaim Bloom. So even if there was to be a managerial change at some point, would it just be automatic? I think in the minds of a lot of fans, well, Yadi's a great Cardinal. He knows the game so well. He approached it from the catcher's position, and so obviously he would be the guy to take over. I don't know if it's that simple, but I also don't know that the job is coming open, right? I mean, we just don't know the effect of that relationship between Chaim Bloom and Oliver Marmol, but Ollie had nothing but good things to say about the interactions he's had with Chaim Bloom to this point. And even though it is kind of this, I guess in public topics of conversation, it's more of a cloud hanging over the situation. But I believe Ollie Marmol when he says that, it's not something that he is thinking about. He's operating under the guise of, hey, I have to do the best job that I can to help the Cardinals move forward every single day. And if Yadier Molina can be around, it's not about me. It's not about, who's going to be the manager someday. In fact, Ollie rattled off a number of, he said, hey, Skip Schumacher was my bench coach. He could be this manager in St. Louis and he would do a great job. And Albert Pujols would do a great job. And Yadier Molina would do a great job. Daniel Descalso could do this job. And so if I'm meant to have this job, I'm going to have it. If I'm not, I'm not, I believe was what Ollie said in the interview. And so it's one of those things where I genuinely believe him when he is approaching it from a perspective of, hey, I want to do the things that are best for the St. Louis Cardinals and best for our players and moving the organization forward. That's what he's doing. I love it that Ollie Marmol does some of these types of interviews because when you're seeing a guy, and this is true of any manager in baseball, it's not just Ollie Marmol that this is specific to. This was specific to Mike Matheny. This was true of Mike Schilt. It's true of Oliver Marmol, and it would be true of about 29 other managers across Major League Baseball. We're just exposed more to what we see from the local manager because that's what everybody watching this video follows. They follow the Cardinals and they're a Cardinals fan. But regardless of who it is, when you're in the heat of battle and you're 10 minutes after a game walking to a podium to be asked about why you lost 4-3 to a rival team and why so-and-so blew it in the ninth inning and why did you pitch this guy and why didn't you pinch hit for that guy, there's always going to be a different energy to that than the type of energy that an Oliver Marmol can display in a radio interview sometime in the afternoon, or the energy that he can display, the personality that he can display under that setting. And so I think people get a really good feel for when you're, taking in some of that outside media, what Oliver Marmol is all about. And he says this all the time when you spend a little bit of time with him, which obviously a lot of Cardinals fans do not get the opportunity to do, but you get to know more about what he's all about and the way he thinks and the way he approaches not only the game, but just kind of life in general, how he views the opportunity that he has to be the Cardinals manager. And you kind of get a better sense for what he's all about than you necessarily would in a post-game interview setting after a tough loss or even after a close win when the adrenaline is still high. So I think it's been a really, really savvy approach that Oliver Marmol has taken. And this is something that, I guess I can't remember to past seasons, the extent to which these types of things took place with him. But like even going back to spring training, doing radio interviews there from the Cardinals patio next to the clubhouse at the picnic tables with the 101 show the morning after that was there on site. He goes on the Gas House Gang every Tuesday. He's doing some of those things, I think, as a way to kind of let fans have a glimpse at, hey, I'm a real guy. I'm a person. I like to have fun. I like to crack jokes. It's good to see when he's on those types of shows and puts on the text line is right in front of him. So he sees what people are putting on there. And, you just get a feel for the personhood of somebody. And like I've continued to say, I believe that Oliver Marmol, with some tweaks to the roster, which has to come from the front office, right? He's not somebody that can control those things. I think he would be a really effective manager for a roster that fits together like a puzzle a little bit better than this current Cardinals roster does. Now, there's something to be said for elevating the players that you have, and that's obviously something that he strives to do. Look, I don't think he'd be inviting Yadier Molina into the clubhouse setting and into the dugout setting if he didn't understand that, hey, that's something that can help our players, that can elevate our team, and we want to win. We want to go out there and win every single game, regardless of whether our roster is as good as the Yankees roster or as good as the Dodgers roster or as well balanced on our bench as somebody else's roster might be. You're going out there to try to do a job and to win games. And so I just think this is a really compelling angle. I was not necessarily looking to feed into maybe the controversial angle of it when I just simply tweeted out that, oh, hey, this is something that feels notable. When I saw Derek Gould share the news on social media earlier today, and one commenter kind of come back at me and say, well, what do you mean by that? So, well, I mean, the most recognizable living Cardinal is going to be in the dugout for the next couple of days. And I would say that's probably true. Yadier Molina, in terms of recognition by fans and just understanding, he wasn't as great of a player, maybe as Albert Pujols, who is one of the greatest players of all time. Yadier Molina, one of the greatest catchers of all time, though. And I think recognition of what he was to the Cardinals organization for so long, and he never left. He was here the whole way through. I don't think that it's a stretch to say, hey, this is notable. It doesn't mean that, oh, he's taken Ollie Marmol's job. Because, again, Ollie Marmol was the guy who more than rubber stamped him being here. this weekend. He was encouraging it. He was all about it. It sounds like kind of with that text thread, right? It's Yadi sends a text, hey, Mo and Ollie, what do you guys think about this? And Ollie like responds back before Mo can even say something, which of course, I don't think of any reason that Mozeliak would have to say, don't do this. It's kind of that laissez-faire attitude that I've talked about that I think is permeating a little bit when it comes to John Mozeliak the last couple of months. Whereas in previous years, he might have been more hands-on with certain things. Maybe you scratch and claw with certain roster moves to try to turn things through more so than you might in the last couple of months where the perception is, we're not going anywhere anyway. Again, hopefully that's not the way that he is operating, but it's kind of the argument that I've made when it comes to Miles Mikolas and the idea that, look, Kyle Leahy is somebody that I think right away should be right now stretched out to become a starter. By the way, I keep hyping up this interview that Ollie did with BK, but they asked about that as well. Is Leahy somebody that you'd look to stretch out? And Ollie gave an interesting answer to that. He said, we kind of already have an understanding for how that might play. If he's going to stretch out to be somebody contending for our organization as a starter in 2026. And it's not necessarily more that we would need to see to believe that that could be a possibility for his future. And he mentioned Matthew Liberatore actually as a guy, like if they have to manage his workload, could they do some piggybacking when it comes to Kyle Leahy and stretching him out that way down the stretch? Maybe something that could be in consideration. But he did not approach a Miles Mikolas angle to that, which is understandable. Miles Mikolas was actually on the morning show on 101 ESPN today and was, kind of asked about the way that they approached it was, hey, there's guys on the text line that are kind of texting in and saying things. Would you like to hear their questions? And Miles said, yeah, I'm game. And Miles is another guy who, again, you might not like his pitching. You might not think that he's been worth the contract or consistent enough. And I think that's all reasonable to believe. And it's arguably very true with the numbers he's put up the last couple of years. But you can't say that he's not game to, hear the criticism and respond to it. And that's exactly what happened on their show this morning on TMA. He was a guest of theirs, and one of the texters had said, do you feel bad about taking a roster spot from a younger player? He kind of thought about it and ultimately said, no, I don't feel bad. Their time's going to come, and they're going to continue to gain experience down there. Cardinals do have a lot of injuries in AAA this year when it comes to like the pitching prospects that you would have thought could be contending for some opportunities right now. But just interesting to hear kind of his perspective on that. And he did say, hey, they're going to pay me if I'm pitching, and they're going to pay me if I'm not pitching. And so, if they make a decision to go a different direction, I think he's well aware that he still gets paid for that. It was interesting to hear from Serving It Up, the podcast that the Cat does with some of the former Cardinals like Matt Holliday and Lance Lynn. Lance Lynn had a clip that was posted by STL Sports Central talking about the Miles Mikolas situation and said, if it comes to a point in time where he's not consistently performing, do you consider a move to the bullpen and just say that, this is something that we need to do to be able to get a look for some younger guys? And Lance thought maybe Miles would be amenable to that. I think, from an egoless perspective, just go out there and do your best. You're getting paid to do a job. I would like to think that Miles would be open to it as well, but it does not seem like, based on all these answers on that afternoon show with Brandon Kiley today, that that's something that is at least top of mind, or at least something that they are, ready to bring up unprovoked, because the question that was asked was more about Kyle Leahy and not anything to do with, okay, how would you get Kyle Leahy into the rotation? Could it be the Mikolas spot? I wrote about this for STL Sports Central yesterday. You can go check out their website if you would like to read more on my kind of deepest, darkest thoughts about that. It's not anything that says, Miles Mikolas is a bad guy, but right now he's been an inconsistent pitcher. And I do think from an innings perspective, you get Kyle Leahy closer to 90, 100 innings this year, as he is sharper right now than he was in the middle of the year when he had been overworked. I think he's in a place where he would be able to handle that type of workload, and that might get him in a better position for such an opportunity in 2026. So some of the things that we'd be thinking about. One more thing, though, before we get out of here, I want to mention Quinn Mathews. He was fantastic last night for the AAA Memphis Redbirds in a game that aired actually on FanDuel Sports Midwest because the Cardinals were off. I thought that was a great marketing opportunity to allow fans on a regional basis to get a longer look at the guys coming up in the Cardinals organization there in AAA. The Redbirds won that game over Durham 3-1, and Quinn Mathews went 7 strong innings, allowing just 2 hits, 1 walk, no runs, and had 9 strikeouts. His velocity has been down recently, but it was up a tick in the later innings last night in the close to the mid-90s range. And so has he been able to toggle the velocity to figure out kind of, what it is that right now he's not. Again, not to say there's an injury, but we know he was dealing with shoulder stuff that put him on the IL earlier in the season. And guys go through this where you might say, well, normally the velocity I throw is 95. Right now it's low 90s, and I can't articulate why that is. But you got to make sure you're staying within your mechanics and doing everything that can keep you healthy. And then you learn to pitch at a lower velocity, which is something that, it seems like last night Quinn Mathews was able to do. And it was a very effective outing, arguably his best of the season. And so now we've been talking about JJ Wetherholt. You start to wonder about Quinn Mathews potentially being somebody that could join the Cardinals at the big league level sometime this year. I'll reiterate the same thing that I have said when it comes to JJ. It's the idea that you're not going to exhaust his rookie eligibility. And I've been trying to explain this. I know that there's a lot of confusion, I guess would be the word, about this topic, because I still have people replying to me on Twitter and saying, oh, you can't do that because you don't want to lose a year of service time. It's not about the service time with Quinn Mathews or with JJ Wetherholt. What it's about is rookie eligibility. So for a hitter, you have to have fewer than 130 at-bats and fewer than 45 days on the big league active roster in a prior season in order to be rookie eligible for that season, which would be 2026 in this case. And so for the Cardinals, if you wait till mid or late August, whatever the exact date is that signals fewer than 45 days left in the season, that would be the point at which I would advocate, if you're going to bring up Wetherholt, that would be when you do it and not before, because you don't want to lose his rookie eligibility for next year. It's not that they gain or lose a year of service time based on that distinction. It's that if he is rookie eligible, he's eligible for Rookie of the Year. And if he wins that award after being on the active roster in a way that doesn't gain service time in 2026, like before they made this rule about the Rookie of the Year, you get a draft pick. That's kind of what I'm trying to describe and lay out for people. I know I've done it before, but for people that maybe don't know, clearly there are people who still don't understand the distinction. The way that it works is if you don't gain their service time and wait till like April 21st to bring up a guy to get an extra year of service time, if you bring him up at the very beginning of the season and he wins Rookie of the Year, your organization gets a compensation draft pick between like the first and second rounds. It's a really big deal. You can add a really significant player and prospect in that process. And so that's the way you would have to approach it with Wetherholt. If you're going to bring him up at all, you do have to wait a little bit because you want to ensure that he gets that opportunity. And it's not gaming service time, because the service time has no impact on if he comes up this late August or September, or he does it day one of next season. It's the same number of years of team control. And the same would be true for Quinn Mathews. For pitchers, you got to throw fewer than 50 innings, and it's that 45 days on the active roster. So in both cases, if they think there's an opportunity and Quinn's ready, which again, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I don't think you have to say, well, Quinn Mathews needs to get his ERA down to 2.9 for the season, or, he shouldn't be somebody the Cardinals consider. If he's locked in right now, it shouldn't matter that he was struggling a month ago or that his velocity was lower 2 weeks ago. If he's locked in right now and he looks like an opportunity in the big league rotation, is something that, whether he pitches well, whether he struggles in those couple of spots in September, it's something that can benefit him for next year or benefit him going into the offseason where he goes, okay, I got my ass kicked. Like, I have to learn from that experience. And here's the things I need to work on coming into spring training next year so that I'm more ready for when that opportunity arrives once again. I think that can only be a positive if they think he's ready. And I think mentality-wise, Quinn Mathews is a dog. I think he's somebody that if he did get beat around a little bit in the big leagues, he's somebody that's not going to affect him long-term. That's going to maybe pour into what he does and the work that he puts in. But I think that could only be a positive. And so if he is demonstrating right now that he's kind of at the top of his game, and even if that velocity is not where we are used to seeing it for whatever reason, as long as he's physically healthy, that's something that I think should be interesting to consider as well. But again, Cardinals are 500 right now. I know the playoffs is a long shot, but as Miles Michaelis told TMA this morning, really you're 2 good weeks from suddenly being back into a conversation. I know that nobody listening or watching this video expects that of the Cardinals right now, but it's not false. It's not wrong to say that, if you go 2 weeks and you, let's say 12 games, you rattle off a 10-2, all of a sudden, it's a completely different conversation. And so even though we don't expect the 10-2 to come, we don't expect that run from the Cardinals based on where they're at, there is no reason not to continue pursuing that, in my opinion, with the roster moves and with the way that the team is being managed from a front office perspective. And surely that's what's happening too in the dugout with the daily lineup perspective. And it's not that, Oliver Marmol doesn't want to give runway to certain guys. It's they have too many dudes. It's the same conversation we've been having all season. They haven't been able to differentiate one from another, especially when it comes to that crop of left-handed bats. The one guy that in the mind of the organization and Oliver Marmol that has emerged is Alec Burleson. He didn't get daily opportunity at the beginning of the season. He put in the work to show that, like, when my name is called, I'm going to be the most productive bat on this team. And now he's a middle lineup guy for them. And that's not somebody that's going to be part of a rotation where you take him out. it's the big leagues. Ollie always likes to say there's no level higher than this one. And so when you're producing the way that Burleson has, that's the way that it looks. Does it change if his production changes? It should. They should be adaptable to what that looks like. And it's not like you pull a guy after an 0 for 4 or 2 of those in a row. But like a Brendan Donovan right now has been struggling. Do they consider dropping him from the leadoff spot? Like, those are the things that when something goes on for weeks at a time, do you adjust? That's all part of the game, right? You have to decide where to be stubborn and where to be, willing to adapt and willing to make adjustments if there are better options for a certain role on the team. And so those are all things that are happening with an eye on development, with an eye on evaluation, but also with an eye on being as competitive as you can day in and day out. And that's exactly what the Cardinals will look to do tonight when they have Michael McGreevy taking them out against the Cubs. And that's right, Yadi will be back. He will be in the dugout. So let me know in the comments section below what you think of that and what you think of the show. Any feedback that you would like to provide to me as trying to introduce more of a video element to b-schaeff Daily. So if you're listening on Spotify, check it out on YouTube and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Brendan Schaeffer, St. Louis Cardinals writer. And if you enjoy the content and want to continue to support me and all the work that we're doing here, maybe check out the channel membership below. That link is in the video description. And for tier 2 of the YouTube membership, there is a Discord component with the private group chat there. So if you'd like to know anything more about anything that we talked about here today, I'm always available at b-schaefer12 on Twitter. You can shoot me a direct message, and I will try to get back to you and sift through some of the bot messages that come into the other folder. If I don't get to you right away, that's probably why. But always available if you guys would like to talk, or you can shoot a tweet at me publicly, and I can let you know anything that you want to know. But appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in. We will talk to you next time on b-schaeff Daily. Peace.